Helen flinched instinctively, her heart leaping into her throat as Mia tightened her grip around Helen's leg. The little girl's fingers curled into the fabric of her dress, trembling, as Bianca stood in the center of the living room like she owned the place, chin lifted, lips curved in a knowing smirk, eyes sharp and unafraid. The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Ken finally moved. He stepped forward slowly, deliberately, his expression dark, unreadable, but his voice when it came was cold enough to slice through steel. "What are you doing here, Bianca?" Bianca turned to him lazily, as if he had just asked her something utterly ridiculous. She let out a soft laugh, shaking her head. "I don't understand the question." Ken's jaw clenched. Helen could feel the anger rolling off him in waves, barely restrained, dangerous. He took another step forward, his gaze locked on Bianca's face. "You disappear for 6 years," he said, his voice tight, controlled. "You leave me with a newborn. No explanation, no contact, no remorse. And now you walk into my house and claim my child like she's some object you misplaced?" Bianca crossed her arms, unfazed. "She is my child." Mia shifted uneasily, her fingers clutching Helen's dress tighter. "Daddy?" she whispered. Helen's chest tightened painfully. Ken didn't look at Mia. His eyes never left Bianca. "You don't get to say that." Bianca's lips curved into a sharper smile. "I gave birth to her. That makes her mine." Helen felt the words hit her like a slap. Ken's composure cracked. "For 6 years, he snapped, his voice rising, you left us. 6 years I raised her alone. 6 years I stayed up all night when she cried, when she was sick, when she asked where her mother was. And now you show up out of nowhere and think you can just take her back?" Bianca tilted her head. "I didn't say I was taking her back." "Then what exactly are you doing here?" Ken demanded. Bianca's eyes flicked toward Mia, then back to Ken. "I'm reclaiming what's mine." Mia whimpered softly. Helen reacted without thinking. She bent down, pulling Mia gently but protectively against her side, one arm wrapping around the little girl's shoulders. Mia buried her face into Helen's dress, shaking. That was when Bianca noticed. Her gaze snapped to Helen, sharp and assessing. "And who exactly is she?" Helen froze. Ken spoke before she could. "That's not your concern." Bianca's eyes narrowed. "You hired someone to play house with my child?" Ken stepped forward again, this time placing himself directly between Bianca and Mia. "Don't you dare." Bianca scoffed. "You're acting like I'm a stranger." "You are," Ken said flatly. The word hung in the air. Bianca's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second before she masked it. "I am her mother." "No," Ken shot back. "You were her mother. You gave that up the moment you walked away." Bianca took a step toward Mia. "Come here, sweetheart." Mia let out a small cry, pressing herself harder into Helen. Ken moved instantly. In one swift motion, he bent down and lifted Mia into his arms, holding her tightly against his chest. Mia wrapped her arms around his neck, crying softly. "That's enough," Ken said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're not touching her." Bianca's eyes flashed. "You can't keep her from me?" "I can," Ken said coldly, "and I will." He turned to Helen, his gaze locking onto hers. "Take Mia upstairs. Now." Helen's heart pounded. She hesitated for half a second, torn, then nodded. "Come on, sweetheart," she whispered. Mia clung to Ken for a moment before reaching for Helen, her little arms wrapping around Helen's neck as Helen took her. The child's face was wet with tears. "I don't like her," Mia whispered shakily. Helen swallowed hard. "I know," she murmured, holding her tightly. "I've got you." As Helen carried Mia up the stairs, Bianca's voice rang out behind them. "You're making a mistake, Ken. Ken didn't turn. Leave." Bianca laughed softly. "You think this is over?" Ken finally looked at her. "Get out of my house." Bianca's smile widened, slow and deliberate. "I'll be seeing you again." She turned and walked out, heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, the front door closing behind her with a final, echoing thud. The house fell into a heavy, uneasy silence. Upstairs, Helen sat on the edge of Mia's bed, rocking her gently as the child cried herself into exhaustion. "Why was she mad?" Mia asked softly, her voice small. Helen's throat tightened. "Sometimes adults have complicated feelings." "Is she coming back?" Mia asked, fear lacing her words. Helen hesitated, then pulled Mia closer. "You're safe right now," she said gently. "That's what matters." Mia sniffed, nodding, and eventually drifted off to sleep, her fingers still tangled in Helen's sleeve. Helen stayed there long after, staring at the child's peaceful face, her heart aching with emotions she didn't know how to process. When she finally stepped out into the hallway, Ken was standing there, leaning against the wall, his shoulders heavy with tension. "She asleep?" he asked quietly. "Yes." He nodded slowly, then met Helen's eyes. "Thank you." Helen swallowed. "What just happened?" Ken exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. "You deserve to know." Her heart skipped. He straightened, his expression grim. "There are things about Bianca, about Mia, that I never told you." Helen's chest tightened as he looked at her, eyes heavy with guilt and resolve. "We need to talk." Ken didn't speak immediately. He walked toward the large window instead, his back to Helen, hands resting on the glass as if he needed something solid to hold him up. Outside, the lights of the city glowed calmly, unaware that everything inside the house felt like it was breaking apart. "I never wanted this to happen," he said quietly. Helen stood still, her heart racing. "Then why did it?" He turned slowly, his face tired, stripped of the control she was used to seeing. "Because I made promises I couldn't keep. And because Bianca made choices she refuses to take responsibility for." Helen folded her arms around herself. "You said I deserved to know, so tell me." "All of it." Ken nodded. He took a breath, deep and slow, like he was bracing himself. 6 years ago, he began, Bianca was at the peak of her life. Her father was sick, and everyone knew the company would soon need a new leader. Her stepsisters were waiting for any reason to prove she wasn't fit to take over. Helen listened closely, her stomach tightening. "She found out she was pregnant," Ken continued. "With Mia." Helen's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. "She was terrified," he said, "not because of the baby, because of what the pregnancy meant for her future. If anyone found out, the board would see her as weak, emotional, unstable. Her sisters would use it against her. So she hid it," Helen whispered. Ken nodded. "She hid it so well that no one suspected a thing. She stopped attending events, traveled under excuses, cut off friends, even me." His jaw tightened. "By the time I realized how far she'd gone, she was already close to giving birth." Helen's chest ached. "And you?" "I begged her," he said quietly. "I told her I didn't care about the company. I told her we could raise the baby together. I told her I loved her." His voice broke slightly. "She didn't listen." Ken looked down at the floor. "She gave birth in secret. No family, no press, no celebration. And then," he paused, swallowing hard, "she handed Mia to me." Helen felt her breath catch. "Just like that?" "She said she couldn't do it," Ken said. "That a child would ruin everything she worked for. She said Mia would be safer with me." Tears stung Helen's eyes. "She left that same night," Ken continued. "No goodbye, no promise to return. She cut all contact." Helen's voice trembled. "And Mia?" Ken looked away. "She cried for weeks. She was just a baby, but I swear she felt it. I felt it." Silence filled the room. Helen shook her head slowly. "So you raised her alone?" "Yes." "And the lies?" Helen asked softly. "About Bianca being abroad?" Ken closed his eyes. "Mia kept asking about her mother, over and over, every year. I didn't know what to say. How do you tell a child that her mother chose power over her?" Helen's chest tightened painfully. "So I lied," he admitted. "I said she was working overseas. I said she loved her but couldn't come home yet. I told myself I was protecting Mia." He laughed bitterly. "But I was just postponing the pain." Helen wiped at her eyes. "And now?" "Now Bianca is back," Ken said. "And Mia's old enough to understand. I can't keep lying anymore." Helen nodded slowly. "And me?" she asked quietly. "Where do I fit in all this?" Ken met her gaze. "You weren't supposed to." The words hurt more than she expected. "You were supposed to be temporary," he continued quickly. "A solution to a school problem, nothing more." Helen's lips pressed together. "But you became more," he said softly. "You became someone Mia trusts, someone she runs to, someone she calls mom without thinking." Her heart clenched. "I never planned that," Ken said, "but I won't pretend it didn't happen." Helen took a shaky breath. "This started as a deal," she said. "I did it for money. I lied to a child. You saved your mother," Ken said firmly. There's no shame in that. Helen looked away, but I stayed. And no. Ikari. Ken stepped closer. So do we. She looked up surprised. I care about you, he said simply. And I care about what this will do to Mia. Helen's voice trembled. That's why I should leave. Ken froze. What? If Bianca is back, Helen continued, forcing the words out, then Mia will be confused, hurt. I don't want to be another woman who disappears from her life. Ken's jaw tightened. I don't want you to leave. Helen's eyes searched his face. Is that because you need me? Or because you want me? The question hung between them. Ken answered without hesitation. Because I want you. Helen's breath caught. I won't force you to stay, he said quietly. But I won't pretend you don't matter. Tears slid down Helen's cheeks. This is all so messy. Ken nodded. I know. They stood there, the weight of truth pressing down on both of them. Finally, Ken spoke again. Let me take you somewhere tomorrow. Helen frowned slightly. Where? Somewhere simple, he said. No pretending, no lies. Just. Her heart skipped. Adate? Yes, he said. A real one. Helen hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Upstairs, Mia stirred in her sleep, calling out softly. Helen instinctively moved toward the stairs, stopping herself halfway. Ken noticed. She already feels safe with you. Helen swallowed. That's what scares me. Ken watched her for a moment, then said quietly, maybe that's not something to run from. Helen didn't reply. Later that night, Helen lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Her mother was healthy. The money had saved her life. That part of the deal was done. But this? This was something else entirely. Down the hall, Ken stood outside Mia's room, listening to her breathe, knowing that the past had finally caught up with him and that whatever came next would change everything. The next evening felt different. There was no tension in the air, no heavy silence pressing down on Helen's chest. Ken picked her up himself, not in a suit this time, but in simple clothes. He looked relaxed, almost human in a way she hadn't seen before. You don't look like a billionaire tonight, Helen said softly as she got into the car. That's the point, Ken replied, glancing at her with a faint smile. Tonight, I'm just a man taking a woman out. They drove to a quiet place by the water. No crowd, no cameras. Just soft lights and the sound of waves hitting the shore. They talked, not about money, not about Bianca, not about lies. Helen talked about her mother, how strong she was, how afraid Helen had been of losing her, how she had felt so helpless in that hospital hallway. Ken listened. Really listened. I never asked you how you were handling all of that, he admitted. Helen shrugged lightly. You didn't have to. You helped save her life. That alone means more than you know. Ken nodded slowly. And you helped save my daughter's heart. The words stayed with her. When they laughed, it felt easy. When they were quiet, it felt safe. For the first time since everything began, Helen didn't feel like she was pretending. When they returned home, Mia was already asleep. Ken walked Helen to her door. Thank you for tonight, she said softly. I meant what I said, Ken replied. No pretending anymore. Helen nodded. I want that too. The days that followed were calm. Bianca didn't return. Mia became brighter, lighter. She laughed more. She clung to Helen less out of fear and more out of comfort. She asked fewer questions about the past and more about the future. One afternoon, as Helen helped her with homework, Mia looked up suddenly. Are you going to stay? Mia asked. Helen's heart paused. I'm not going anywhere right now. Mia smiled. Good. That night, Ken watched them from the doorway, something warm settling in his chest. A week later, Ken asked Helen to meet him in the garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange and pink colors. Mia was inside with the nanny, distracted with cartoons and snacks. Ken stood there, hands slightly shaking. Helen, he said, clearing his throat. She noticed his nervousness immediately. What's wrong? He took a step closer. I've made many mistakes in my life, some I can never undo. Helen listened quietly. But loving you, he continued, is not one of them. Her breath caught. I don't want a temporary solution, he said. I don't want lies or roles or contracts. He reached into his pocket and slowly knelt down. Helen gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I want a family, Ken said, his voice steady but emotional. A real one, with you. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Helen's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Ken slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a tight embrace. Inside the house, Mia watched from the staircase, eyes wide. "Are you crying?" Mia asked, running toward them. Helen knelt and hugged her. "Happy tears," Mia grinned. "Does that mean you're staying forever?" Ken looked at Helen. Helen smiled softly. "If you'll have me." Mia wrapped her arms around her tightly. "I want you to be my mom." The words felt different this time. "Real." Before the wedding, Ken insisted on visiting Helen's mother. Her mother sat on the couch, healthier now, stronger, her eyes filled with emotion as Ken spoke. "I love your daughter," he said respectfully, "and I promise to protect her and honor her." Helen's mother reached for his hands. "She's been through so much," she said gently. "Please don't break her heart." "I won't," Ken replied firmly. She nodded. "Then you have my blessing." The wedding was small and beautiful. No pressure, no show, just love. Mia walked down the aisle throwing petals, smiling so wide it looked like her face might split. When Helen said her vows, her voice shook, but her words were sure. When Ken spoke, his eyes never left hers. "I choose you," he said simply. After the wedding, life slowly settled into something peaceful.